is one of the most important things is being able to connect to a database. If you remember last time when we started this, we created this. So we're giving it a host name. Host name is where your MySQL server is located. So which web server you want to connect to. We have one installed on our local machine, so we use 127.0.0.1, which refers to our local computer. We can also say localhost, which also refers to our local computer. They're interchangeable. We are connecting on port 3306, and we're giving it a username, and password is usually blank when you install MySQL at first. So normally, whenever you connect from PHP or anywhere, in order to connect, you need to provide it the host name, the port number, the username, and the password. So that way you can connect to the MySQL database. Once you have the database connected, you can open the MySQL database and not connected. Okay, did I not start MySQL? I did not. So you want to start MySQL before you connect to it, of course.
MySQL workbench. We have it installed.
Alright, so now when I open this, it's going to open up MySQL. This is a database we created. There are two other databases here. Basically, MySQL, in one MySQL server, you can create multiple databases. A database is a set of data specific to a particular purpose, right? So you can create a database by saying create space database space name of the database. So if you want to create a database called, Moz, so you can just say create database Moz.
With quotes.
And that'll create a database with the name of Moz. You can also say create schema Moz. In MySQL, schema and database are interchangeable. In a lot of the other databases, they're not. For example, if you go to Postgres, which is also a SQL database, one database has multiple schemas. So each schema becomes a folder inside a database.
Okay.
But in MySQL, the ratio is 1-to-1, so you can create a schema and that'll create the database, or you can just create the database. Same thing.
But you can have multiple schemas inside database, right?
Not in MySQL. In MySQL, you can only have one schema in each database. We're going to work with MySQL, but in PostgreSQL, I'm just telling you for your information, in Postgres, you can have multiple schemas inside one database.
Anyway, you want to come closer?
You want to come over here? So we created a database named Moz, right? And now inside our database, we have tables, views, stored procedures, and functions. We will get to each one of those, but MySQL Workbench can easily create a database for you if you just go here. You can say new database, create a new schema in the connected server. So you can just create a new database on the fly, but you should know how to do it from the command line because that's important. When you're using PHP, you're not gonna have MySQL Workbench to work with. You're gonna have to send commands through PHP to MySQL to do all of these operations. So tables is where we define the structure of our database. Views are structures that are combinations of different tables, and I'll get into those later. Those are more advanced. Stored procedures are basically stored procedures and functions. Basically, functions are like you created functions in PHP. They're functions in MySQL that perform a particular operation. So you can say, I want to create a function that, updates all of my users and marks their password as expired, right? So you can create a function that marks all of their passwords expired, and then a stored procedure is sort of like an event, triggers. I'm going to go further into that, but for now I'm going to focus on tables to just give you an intro into how MySQL is structured. So you create a bunch of tables, and tables are for particular objects like a user, a company, a person, employee, a product. So let's say we create a table, we call the table drivers, right? Driver. So every table has to have what we call a primary key. A primary key is what is unique for each row for that table. So usually we call it ID.
Call them ID.
But you can call it anything else. You can call it driver underscore ID. You can call it whatever you like. But you need to have at least one primary key. See, when I created ID, it automatically marked it as PK, which is primary key, and NN, not null. Your primary key cannot be null. And here we define what type of data this particular field is going to store. So for this one, we're going to do integer. I'll explain these really quick to you as well. UQ is for unique. If you want to mark it as unique. Bin is for binary, if this is binary. UN is unsigned. Unsigned means if it's an integer, unsigned means there won't be a negative sign in front of it. It'll always be positive. Since our IDs are never going to be negative, I'm going to mark it unsigned. ZF is zero filled, so which basically automatically fills it with zeros until you put something in there. AI is auto increment. Auto increment, basically what auto increment does is it says every time I create a new entry into this table, I don't need to pass an ID. It'll take the previous ID and it'll add one to it and it'll create the next ID automatically.
G.
And then G is if this column, this is something new they added, if this is a generated column, if you generated this through a script or something, if you didn't create it yourself. I think that's what it means. This is the first time I've seen this. And then you have your default. Default is where you can tell it, okay, if I don't provide an ID, what is my ID going to be? And since we have auto increment, we don't need to worry about that because our ID is going to be automatically populated. Right? What else can we put in a driver?
Name,
Name, okay. What else?
email,
Email,
phone number,
phone number.
License number.
Okay,
License
so
number.
email, phone number. Okay, let's do email. Let's do phone number. So what kind of data type is an email?
that would be
String, basically. In MySQL, there's no concept of a string, but there's a concept of char, which is fixed
worker.
in size,
Oh,
and there's a varchar, which means varying size. It means the size of the field can go up and down.
Okay.
Like a variable chart.
Variable. The size of the field is variable, but you can give it a maximum size. So how long do you think an email is usually? How many characters max?
50, 60.
50?
Yeah.
Let's go with 50. So is our email always going to be present?
Yeah.
So it's never going to be null.
Yeah.
Is our email going to be unique?
Yes.
Is our email going to be, we don't need to worry about unsigned because it's not a number. And that's it.
Yeah.
So what kind of data type is phone number?
Integer.
Integers? Are you not storing dashes?
Yeah.
You are, so then it can be an integer.
In varchar.
Is it a fixed length?
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh
Yes.
yes.
Okay, then
It's
it's
like 10
It's a
numbers
chart.
and 2
Just a
dashes.
chart, not var
char.
chart.
How many characters is it going to be?
You can
12.
go for 12.
12. So it's going to be exactly 12 characters every time.
So 10.
Is it ever going to be empty?
No.
No. Is it going to be unique?
Yes.
Yes.
What if two drivers are using the same phone number?
Pick it up.
Why not?
It's a policy.
All right, let's make it unique. What else do we have in a driver?
License.
License state. Which state is your license?
License state. Okay. How many letters is state?
2.
Character 2. Not. Are we going to require license, or are we going to allow license to not be present?
Yeah, we will
Will be required.
record.
Required. Okay.
Is a driver.
What is NN?
Not
Not
null.
null.
No.
Not no.
You see those?
Do you understand what null is, by the way?
No?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You understand null?
No.
Angela, you understand null? Okay. License number?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that going to be numbers, or is that going to be characters and
It's
numbers?
both.
Correct numbers. Both.
Okay.
Var.
Is this length fixed?
Yes.
200.
It is, but I don't know how much. It's
Not
not.
for different states.
Okay. Then
Var
no.
chart? How many length max?
30.
30. Alright,
1, 2, 3.
we're going to require it. And is it going to be unique?
Yes.
Yes.
What if my license number from Arizona is different from his license number in
New Jersey.
New Jersey?
So yeah,
I
it's
don't
gonna be
think
unique.
so.
Still gonna be unique.
So how's it going to be unique?
The license database is national, so it cannot be.
Oh,
It cannot be.
okay then, it's going to be unique.
You can't have the same license number, bro.
Alright, so what else do we need? Is that good for now?
Yeah.
Alright,
That's enough.
so let's hit apply. Here is the create table script that I was looking for. So this is how you create a table using MySQL's create table command. So create, see how easy MySQL is? Create space database
Space name.
space database name, and you create a database. Create space table space database name dot
Driver.
table name.
Table.
So you're going to create a table called driver in the database with the name of Moz, and then you're going to list all of your fields. You're going to say my first field is an ID, It's an integer, it's unsigned, it's not null, and it's going to auto increment. You're going to put each one of these with a space.
So if you were to write it, code it, you would do it like this, right?
Exactly. If you were to code it, you can just code it like this.
Okay.
You can add these. This by itself would be enough, but we added unique indexes to it. When we said email is unique, we said phone number is unique. A little word about naming convention. So for database name, I try to always go lowercase, and if there's multiple words, then underscores. MySQL is case sensitive. For table names, same thing. For index names, I always add an IDX underscore in front of it, so that way I know it's an index. Because MySQL has a database of its own, where it stores all of your table data and all of your database data. Structure, basically your database structure, your table structure, everything is stored within a MySQL database. MySQL has a database called MySQL. I'll show that to you. And then I'm going to put IDX underscore, and I'm going to hit apply. You know what? I'm going to remove license number. I'm going to assume that license number is not unique across the country. It's only unique within your state. Okay? So I'm going to remove that just for our for sake purposes. Okay. So I'm going to remove this. I'm going to apply it again. Unique index. Alright, I'm going to remove the indexes. Giving me that. Usually I go with this. So we created our table. This is the command to create a table. I'm going to apply it. Once I've applied it, if you look, I have tabs here. First tab is indexes. This is where you actually add your indexes. Unique is an index. Primary is an index. So let's say I create a new index. I call it IDX underscore. Table name is Maz underscore drivers underscore unique. What is it? It's a unique index. And it is on which column is it on?
ID.
Oh, no, not driver. This is going to be
Column.
email. Email is unique, right?
Right.
So I'm going to select email, and I'm going to hit apply. This is how you add an index. Alter table means change the table, right? Alter table is a command you're going to be using a lot when you play with databases. Alter table, change the table. Table name, database name dot table name, and then what are you changing? You're adding a unique index with this name to this column in ascending order, and you're marking it visible. It doesn't like the visible, I think. Let's try that one. Yeah. So I'm using a different flavor of MySQL. I'm using, we have MariaDB, which is different from MySQL. It's a modification of MySQL to make some improvements. So that's why some of the MySQL commands don't line up exactly the same. So you have to create your own. So I'm going to add another index. I'm going to call it, we were talking about keeping state license number unique within each state, right?
Yeah.
So we need a unique index on Moz database on
State.
the license state license number.
Unique.
This is what I called it. It's going to be unique, and I'm going to check both of these columns. When I check both of these columns, what it does is it says both of these columns combined should be unique. So there should only be one license ID 1 in New Jersey. There should not be multiple license ID 1s in New Jersey. There should be only one license ID 56789 in Arizona, not two of them. So it puts a unique constraint on both of these. They're also called constraints, not constraints, but. And I'm going to remove visible at the end of it so that way MySQL doesn't scream at me. And we did the same thing here. We did an alter table, add unique index, we gave it a name, and then we gave it both of the fields that are unique, and that's it. The next thing I want to show you, I'll show you after we do after we do some more tables. We'll go to foreign keys. All right, so now we have a table. It's called driver. How do we add data to it? How do we select data from it? How do we do all of that? So we're going to do select star from Moz dot driver.
Termin ID.
It didn't give us anything. It says 0 volts returned successful because there's no data in there.
What is star for? Data?
Start from. Yeah.
What is star for? Star?
Star means all. It means give me all the fields of driver of this table. But we don't have anything in there. So what we need to do is we need to insert data. How do we insert data? Insert into Moz.driver. We define the fields that we want to put in there. We said ID is auto-generated, right? So we don't want to give it an ID. We're going to give it an email. We're going to give it a phone number. We're going to give it a license state. And we're going to give it a license
Number.
All right? So we define the fields that we're passing it inside parentheses, space, and put values. And then another set of parentheses where we define their values. So the first one is email. So email is moz@gmail.com. Phone number is 480-888-8888. And then license state, let's say is Arizona, and license number is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right. Now, to show you something, and a semicolon goes at the end, I'm going to purposely add an additional digit to the phone number to make it break.
But you asked for 12 digits, and these are still 11
So I think
digits.
it's purposely.
So what about those
I
dashes?
asked for 12 characters.
Correct,
12.
yeah, characters, but you are inputting
13.
11 characters.
How is it 11 characters? 10 character phone number
And the
and 2
dash.
dashes.
The
Oh, the
characters
dashes
too.
as well. Okay.
So watch what happens when I put 13 characters. So first I'm going to do just the simple one with 12 characters, which should work. So if we run this, we're going to just select this and we're going to run it. It worked. Now if we do select star from Moz.driver, one row is returned. Where's my output? There's a problem with MySQL desktop where output gets hidden. And it's hard to bring it back. So I'm going to run this from command line. Even more fun, right? Where's my command line? So let's do MySQL dash U. To make this a little bigger. So that way you guys can read it. Where's Alright. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
So command line to connect to MySQL is MySQL space dash U space the user's name. So our user's name is root space dash H the host name. Host name is localhost,
Local.
so we can ignore the dash H since we're connecting locally. And then the last parameter is dash P for password. And now after that you can put the password here, or you can, since we don't have a password, we're going to ignore the dash P as well. So I'm going to do MySQL. And I don't have MySQL installed here. This is bad. Actually, my apologies. So I'm going to do slash applications slash zin slash bin slash MySQL dash U root. And there I am. We're going to do it from the command line. So for our first thing, we're going to, another command I'm going to show you, which is available from the command line, is show databases. Here's a list of my databases. Test is something that, programming class is something we created, test is something we created, PHP MyAdmin came pre-installed. Performance underscore schema is MySQL's internal database, which MySQL uses to manage your structure. Information underscore schema is also MySQL's internal database. MySQL itself is an internal database that MySQL uses. Okay? Let me show you something cool. So I'm going to do select star from MySQL dot user, not star. Let's just do user host user host. So right now, these users have access to our database. This user only has access through this host. This user has access through this host, and this user has access through this host. Now we're working with database named Moz. We're going to say use Moz. Use Moz means not to use you, but to use that database.
Okay.
And we're going to do the same query, select star from Moz, from drivers. Here's what we created. It automatically gave it an ID of 1. It stored our email, stored our path, a phone number, license state, and the license number. Let's say I run the same thing again, and I change the phone number and add a 9 to the phone number.
Right.
Or actually, say just I run the same thing again, right? So I'm going to copy this command, run it from here. Since I'm here. Error, duplicate entry for moz@gmail.com. Why?
It's unique.
It's unique. Alright. So,
Why isn't it saying for the state and the license?
because the email is the
That's
first
first.
thing that came up.
Yeah.
So let's say moz1@gmail.com.
No.
License is invalid. Okay, so let's say we add a 0 to the license.
Not unique.
It
Nice.
created one. So let's do select star from driver. Alright. It went from 1 straight to 4.
For
How?
because of the sequence.
No, because we had
Because you
errors.
added 3 times, 4 times.
Exactly.
And
We
one
ran
more
into
thing,
errors.
the phone was unique too.
The phone, did we make the phone?
No,
unique?
no, you didn't know. To say
I don't think we did.
2 people can use the same
It's not
phone
unique,
number.
but
Yeah.
12 characters.
Okay. Now I'm going to do delete. So command for delete is delete space from space moz.driver where ID equals 4.
Also
Okay.
delete from Moz-driver where IDs for,
Almost reads like English,
okay.
right?
Yeah.
Delete from, insert into, select from, right? Almost reads like English. So let's say we delete this. It gave me okay, 1 row affected. Now if I do a select, it's gone. Now, instead of doing star, I can say select email only, and it'll give me only email. I can say select only 1 thing, 2 things, whatever, however many things I want. I can say
Let's,
email and phone. Right? Easy enough?
Mhm.
This is pretty easy. You just gotta remember.
Yeah, it's just a lot of memorization. Select from, insert into, create table, create database, alter table. Very simple commands. Now we're going to do something else. Just to show you guys. We're going to create this. This is not going to be unique anymore since we deleted that record. But I'm purposely going to add a 9 to it. So the characters are more than 12, right?
Okay.
Watch what happens. It didn't give me an error. It inserted. And you know what it did? It took off the last 9 and stored the first 12.
Okay, of course.
Angela, you remember when we were having, I don't know if you remember, we were having a problem where we were not seeing, it was for invoices more than $10,000. It was taking off the, it was because it was taking off the last digit because the database, the field size was.
From the amount of the invoice?
Yeah,
Wow.
because the size of the field,
Does it produce error logs or anything?
it
when
does
does
not.
that?
It does not.
So you just have to figure it out.
Exactly.
Fun.
So your invoice amount field was
It was automatically
5
rounding.
digits?
It was automatically rounding. Since if it's an integer, it rounds automatically. So you have to be careful when you use this. Now if I do a select, it's there, and it took off the 9. That 9 is gone. It did everything fine, it's just it didn't take the 9. Alright? So now let's make it a little more interesting. Right? We have one table, let's add another table. So we were studying object-oriented programming.
Can I be charted?
Charter?
दो question है
A driver is a,
What?
when we do object-oriented programming and we were extending classes, we were using is a relationship, right? So a driver is a
A child?
person.
A person? Oh.
person, yeah.
Exactly. Child.
Well, yeah, it's a child of person, right?
Child. It's a parent-child
Relationship.
relationship in
Oh.
object-oriented programming. It's called a parent-child relationship. Our driver is a person, right?
Mhm.
So let's create a person table.
A person of mass.
Yeah. So let's create a table. We're going to call it person. Let's create it using this.
So this is a new table in the existing database?
Yes.
Okay.
Create table Moz dot person, right? Sorry. Create table Moz dot person. What's it gonna have? First, what's the first thing it's going to have?
Name of the person.
Before the name.
ID.
ID. Unique. We need something unique. So we're going to call it, I normally don't remember the create table syntax, I just create table. But if you're going to become a DBA, you should remember that.
Should remember what.
The syntax for create.
You're gonna become a DBA? Database administrator?
She's going to.
Oh, okay. I thought you were talking to me.
No.
So database administrator,
Yeah.
DBA.
Yep.
It also means doing business as.
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does. Where's your smart connect? Smart view. So first thing we're going to have is ID. It's an integer. It's a primary key. It's not null. It's unsigned. And it's auto-incrementing. We know what that means, right?
Auto.
Yeah.
Primary key, not null, unsigned, auto-incrementing.
Mhm.
What else are we going to have?
Unique. No. Unique. ID has to be unique.
ID. Primary key is always unique anyway,
Okay.
so you don't need to add that.
You do the username.
Name?
Username.
No. Person doesn't have a username.
Name.
Name, right? So we're going to do first underscore name. How many characters?
45.
45 is fine.
Yeah.
Do we want it to be blank?
No.
No.
Okay. What else?
Nothing.
Last name?
last name.
Alright, what else?
Date of birth.
Date of birth. Okay, that's a good one. I'm gonna just call it DOB. What kind of field is DOB?
Integer.
No.
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 Indeed.
Well, you can have it as anything. Like varchar is better. No,
Binary.
isn't it?
So MySQL has a long list of date fields. Date. There's date time, there's timestamp, there's time. We're gonna call it date.
Mhm.
Do we want it to be empty?
No.
Okay, let's say we don't want to require it. Do we want it to be empty?
Yes.
So what's the default going to be? We don't want to force them to enter their date of birth.
We'll leave empty then.
Do we want them to leave it empty?
Yeah.
You always want to try to avoid empty in MySQL. You want to do a null. Because a null does not take space, empty takes 1 byte.
So it's not gonna show it somebody.
Let's say you
doesn't
have
provide-
1,000,000 records, you have 1,000,000 1-byte records instead of 1,000,000 0-byte records. So 1,000,000 bytes adds up to kilobytes, megabytes, gigabytes,
Gigabytes. Yeah.
right? So if you have 1,000,000 records, you don't want empty, you want null. It's always a good practice. So we're going to default it to null. What else can we have? Or is that enough?
That's enough.
That's enough? Alright, let's hit it. Look what it did. Default, null. This is how you set a default.
Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
We could have said default 0000 dash 00 dash 00. But we don't want that. We
That will
want
take a
null.
space. Will that zero take a space?
Yes,
Okay.
of course. It'll take more space than empty space because it's more characters. So
What does it mean to set up a default? That means if there's not a value that you're receiving, then it defaults to null? Is that what that
Exactly.
means? Okay.
exactly, and I'll show that to you. So let's say we create a person for Moz now. I'll show that to you in a second, but before I show that to you, for the driver table, how do we connect the driver and the person?
Extends.
Relationship.
Relationship. Relationship. In MySQL, we have what we call relationships.
Relationship. Okay.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a person underscore ID. Now, if person underscore ID is an integer, if person.id is an integer, then what's person underscore ID? Integer, right?
Integer.
Do we want it to be blank?
No.
No.
We always want it to be there. And do we want it to be unique?
Yes.
Yes, we do. Actually, we're not going to put that in there right now. What we're going to do is we're just going to create the column. Okay? Forgot to show that to you. So let's say we had person 2 underscore ID, that was an int. So this is alter table, add column, person 2 underscore ID, integer 1, well, or 10, I did it for the previous table. Default is null after person ID, because I already created person ID. But if I could have said after phone, so it would have showed up here. It would have added it here. So I can tell it which field I want to add, what I'm going to call it, what kind of data type it is, what kind of parameters it has, and where I want it in
That
my
thing is
list.
slow.
It's lagging a lot.
It's lagging.
Here or
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're limiting that last one to one number?
No, I was just giving an example.
Oh, okay.
So that the last one is going to be null if you have a value in person ID. That's what you said too.
Defaults to null. So this is foreign keys is where we connect tables. Alright? So I'm going to create a new foreign key, f key underscore driver underscore person underscore ID. Not FK. Use FK. Reference table. Which table do we want to reference? We want to reference the person table, right?
Right.
And which column do we want to add this to? We want to add this to person ID. And which column do we want in person table? We want ID column. Did we actually create this table? We did. Refresh. We didn't create this table. Use mods. Show tables. Select star from person. Just going to save, reopening. Not connecting. Did I use? My SQL workbench is giving me a hard time. this one more time. Alright, here we go. So we're going to add foreign key. We're going to call it fk underscore driver underscore person underscore ID. And we are going to connect our driver table to our person table. We want to reference the person ID and make it we didn't mark it unsigned, that's why that's an issue. We're going to change column person ID, and we are going to mark it unsigned. Because if one is unsigned and the other one is not, it's not going to work. If one is of size 10 and the other one is size 11, it might break. So you want to make sure your columns on the both tables, so the person ID in driver table and the ID in person table, both have to match up. They both have to be the same data type, same size, and similar parameters. Right? So let's say fk driver person ID, and we're going to reference person table, person ID. Now it automatically selected ID. Right? So the person ID in our driver table is going to equal the ID in our person table. And then if the ID on the person table gets updated, then we don't want to take any action. But if the person gets deleted, we want to delete the driver. We have options here. We can restrict it, so you cannot delete a person until you delete a driver. Or we can cascade it, so if you delete a person, it also deletes the driver. Or we can set it to null, which we don't have an option for here because we said person ID cannot be null. Or we can say no action, which is not also an option because then if that's going to break the relationship, right? So we only really have two options. We can either restrict them or we can cascade them. If we restrict them, then they won't be able to delete a person until they delete the driver, which is a good thing for certain situations. You don't want to delete an entire company, or you don't want to delete, for example, invoicing. You don't want to delete an entire invoice until you delete each one of the line items because you want them to be responsible for every single line. You don't want them to delete an entire invoice in one shot, right? That could be a scenario. So you will make them delete one thing at a time before you delete the overall thing.
So you're saying, right,
right now we're going to put cascade. So what cascade is going to do is it's going to say, if you delete the person, the driver gets deleted. And this is what it looks like. So when you add a foreign key, the first thing it does is it adds an index. So we don't need to make person ID unique because adding the index will make it unique. Or adding the index, actually what adding the index does is it makes it searchable. It's much faster to search something that's indexed than search something that's not indexed. What indexing does is it stores data related to every single column in your database, in your table, inside a separate table to make it more searchable, to make the searches faster, to make the reads faster. So if you add an index on something, reading it becomes much faster, writing it becomes much slower. That's just how the performance of MySQL works, or most SQL databases work. what you're learning here in the language is SQL language. SQL language is not only specific to MySQL. The same exact SQL language works for Oracle, Microsoft SQL, it works for Postgres SQL, it works for, what's the other one? MySQL something. MySQL Lite. So it works for all of them. So the same language you can apply to multiple databases. There is only a handful of commands. We're going to add this foreign key and just watch. It's going to give us an error. Why?
Because we didn't remove visible from line 2.
Okay. Let's go back and remove visible. Still going to give us an error. Why? What do we have in driver's table?
Name, ID, email,
Email.
Data.
data.
Do we have a Moz? Do
Person.
we have a person named Moz in driver's table?
No.
No,
Do we have an entry in driver's table?
Yes.
there was
There are 2 entries in driver's table. We are adding a field that cannot be null. And it has a foreign key to a person table, which is blank.
Say that again.
We have a field. Oh, it added the person ID.
He made it 0 for both of them.
So the person ID is there. It's trying to add an index to it, and it's trying to add a foreign key to it. But the person ID here is 0, defaulted to 0. Does a person ID of 0 exist in person table? It does not. So how is it going to work? It's not going to work because we're trying to reference something that doesn't exist. We're trying to create a relationship between person and driver, and the person doesn't exist. How's the relationship going to work? So first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a person. So let's say insert into Moz.person, and what are the columns here? Name, first name, last name. Now watch what happens when we don't give it a date of birth because we marked it as
No.
default. Default of no. Moz, last name of Khan. Alright?
Mhm.
When we run this, it added a person named Moz. Select star from person. It added a person named Moz Khan with a date of birth of null and ID of 1. Now we can go to our driver table and we can tell them that we have a person for this driver. So we're going to say update driver update, another MySQL command. Update Moz.driver set person underscore ID equals 1, where ID is equal to
1.
1 or ID is equal to 5.
So you want to add
The
same name,
pers-
same
person
person to
ID
both
for
drivers?
of them. For now. Updated 2 rows. So update database name dot table name, and then set person underscore ID. What do you want to set? What do you want to set it to? And for which, with the where clause, you define for which particular field or filters. So if we do select star from driver now, we have a person ID of 1. And when we try to add this now, it's going to work because now we have person added to the driver table. This error is probably because of the visible. Let me try this. Oh, the index already got added. We just need to alter the table. That worked. Now, if you go to your driver table, let's open it again. Don't save. Alter. Now you see the foreign key reference here. So we were able to select a driver, star from mav.driver. Oh, I got the from. What if we also want to select the person's information along with the driver? What do? We join with the driver table, with the person table.
Join, okay.
So we can do, let's do join person, and then we tell it how we want it to join. On
ID.
person.id equals driver.person ID. So join these two tables.
Where like the person ID and the driver ID matches.
Matches, and then select star means give me everything. Here it is.
It's gonna only show number 1.
ID, email, phone number, license date, license number, person ID. Now here's person's columns. ID, first name, last name, date of birth. Right? Now our select statement has data from both tables. Now guess what we can do now? We can say, give me driver.id, person.name, first name, person.last name, email. Since there's only one email column, we can just call it email. If there were two, then we would say driver.email.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just, for convention, put driver.email and driver.phone. We have the data that we need.
So you can filter the data. In other words,
We can filter what we need from the data. We can say, I only need the person's first name, the person's last name, the driver ID, the email address, and the phone number.
Now, if
Make
you want to,
sense?
I just have a stupid question. So, if you want to make the driver ID and the person ID unique to each other,
Then you
there was
can
only
add,
one person and one driver
Then you can add a unique index onto it.
on person and ID,
Yes.
just like how we did on state and license.
Exactly. We didn't do it just because I wanted to make my life easier. I didn't want to add.
You want to add more drivers than one person.
But that's if you were creating a person per driver, then you would do that. Now, let's say your drivers are also your employees. Now you can use the same person ID in your employee table. So an employee can be driver. I'm sorry, an employee can be a person.
Could be a driver.
A driver can be a person. Admin can be a person. A user can be a person.
And they can all interconnect, but like not necessarily.
So our person table doesn't care what type of person you are.
As long
Our
as you
person table, all it cares is you are a person. Give me a first name, last name, and I'll give you a person ID. So our person table is going to store all of our person data, regardless of who it's for. Our driver table is going to store all of our driver data, regardless of whether that driver is a truck driver, a car driver, Uber driver, Lyft driver, doesn't matter. Do we care? No. We define what type of data we want to store and how we want to store it, and we just store it into the database. We let all the logic stay in programming and only focus on data when it comes to the database. One of the common mistakes that everybody makes is you're able to do if statements inside MySQL.
Mm-hmm.
You're able to do for loops inside MySQL. MySQL has a way to do it.
Different syntax.
Different syntax. Should you do it? No. It's a bad idea. Maybe in stored procedures, maybe in functions. Generally, you want to avoid that as much as possible. You want your database to only be responsible for database because those features, although they're there, they're very expensive. They cost a lot of RAM, they cost a lot of CPU. And your job as engineers is to limit or decrease the amount of RAM and CPU usage so you can increase your performance. Instead of your website coming back in 100 milliseconds, try to make it come back in 10 milliseconds. Your job as engineers is to make sure that you get the best results in the fastest way. Database is supposed to store data. Let's make it store data and nothing else. You know,
Programming, PHP. Keep it over.
models are supposed to interact with databases to get and store data from the database. Let models do that. Views are only supposed to display HTML. Let views do that. Let each component of your application take
Work separate.
responsibility of their own stuff instead of creating a bush where things are going across all over. Then it becomes really hard to understand. For somebody new coming in, trying to understand the architecture of your stuff is going to become really hard if you don't have it set up the right way. Are we good here, or do you want to keep going?
I just had one question, right?
Okay.
So how, like in PHP, when we have classes and like childs, a person is a parent, a driver can be its child, an employee can be another child. But in MySQL, hold on a second.
Turn it off for a second. Okay.
So in MySQL, you can have like through an ID a person connect with a driver, but a driver also connect with an employee.
Sure.
So like they can all interconnect. Instead, like how in PHP we have different person is a different. Driver has a different child, employee has a different child, and then employee and driver don't connect with each other necessarily.
Right. But
in MySQL you can.
You can. Of course you can. So you can do employee.getDriver.
Okay.
You can. Because driver then becomes a property property or field, right?
Mhm.
Get driver becomes a function. Okay? Driver ID becomes a property of the employee.
Okay.
Starting to make more sense?
Yeah. And then all drivers properties can be in an array.
Yep.
Hey.
You guys want to do a quick exercise?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.